Gallo Tech, Galco holsters, and Blackwater ammunition. If you haven't checked any of them out, please check them out. And there's a whole list of sponsors at www.johnbartoloshow.com. I appreciate everyone who supports the show. I do a terrible job of asking for reviews. Please leave a review. And please go check us out everywhere podcasts are heard. We got an awesome guest today. He's a part of not only the Sorinex family, the UFC family, every family. I feel like every family I'm a part of, we don't cross paths enough. Bo Sandoval, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, John? I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
So I had what's her face on, Rachel Balkovic, who's the first women's, the hitting coach. Yeah. I said to her, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. It has to be the dream gig. You know what I mean? You have to have the dream gig. I mean, it has to be kind of where you want to be, right?
It's fun.
And she said, I was going to say, she didn't say yes completely. She said, I think everybody wants to be their own boss, but as far as working for somebody, that's where you want to be, right?
No doubt. I mean, that's, you got all the aspects in life that fulfill you, right? Are you getting challenged by your trade? Are you able to express all your education and everything, all your training? But then also, do you get to hang with your family? Do you get to, do the things that you want to do personally? And so this is the best balance of that, professionally challenged, personally fulfilled that I've found in my 20-year career doing this. So yeah, I've got nothing to complain about. It's been a wild ride.
And just walking in and getting to see the faces, and the people, because I pinch myself even going to 10th Planet when sometimes some of the dudes that are on the mat or even in Extreme if we're training. And I'm not saying it like I train, like I'm nothing like these guys he's with, but I get the opportunity. So I get to see these guys. It's just a lot of fun, right? It's just fun.
It's hard to not get starstruck because especially if you get to dabble and you train with them and you see what that's like in a recreational setting, training with them, and just take that to a whole nother savage level that they enter their competitive arena with. And I can't even fathom what's actually going through their head because they're just playing with me, right? So it's, it's impressive. And it's tough to not get starstruck, and it's tough to really help them dial in on, all right, what are our objectives? What can I do to help you improve as a physical, athletic human being? Like, what can we do?
Now, you've told your story 100 times, but was it like you'd never get there to that point when you got there, or did you feel like it was like, I don't deserve this, or did you feel like it was time?
I feel like for the majority of my career, I didn't really know what the end point. I couldn't tell you what the end point looks like. But so much of my time was spent on getting better and trying to learn and trying to get around people that know more and building off of their experiences. And then when finally someone says, hey, here's a big shot, we think you have all the tools to be able to do that. Then it kind of dawned on me like, oh, shit, I might be ready for something like this. So, that's a very progressive approach across 20 years. So when it came time, my confidence was through the roof. I can kill this. I can provide a service that's going to help this company better provide services for their athletes, and that's what we're doing. I think
the dream job, no offense, Dana, is like you're on a mountain and the people helicopter in that you train, and then when they send the helicopter out, I think that's like the dream scenario. But
you're pretty deal with
you don't have to deal with anything else. The check clears and you're good. I think that's the dream. But as far as being affiliated with a brand, being at the top of your game, being in the right place, I've been fortunate to be in that facility, to visit that facility, to eat there. It's amazing. It's a great facility, and they've done, I'd say, a first-class job in everything they've touched. I've not seen a bad room, right? I mean, and that's something where the infrastructure and the brand and everything come together and collide and create this perfect, mess where you get to walk into Disneyland every day.
Yeah, it had a two-headed dragon of a vision to it. The executive team, all they knew is whatever we build, we want it to be the best in the industry of professional sports. Then when they brought in the software, which is our people, they put a lot of reliance on that. Okay, we're going to give all the means to build the best structure. Now you guys tell us what the technical capabilities, what do we need to do so we can elevate the game. We're going to make it look badass. We're going to give that type of wow experience when someone walks into the building and they see the technology and they see the training apparatuses and they see the availability that the fighters have access to it. Then it was up to us, okay, now you got to put the right pieces in place so that we can help push the fast forward button on the sport and how the sport is prepared for.
It's almost too nice though. Like I'm walking around there, you know what I'm saying? And I know why. Like at first, when I first moved here, right, like a year and a half ago, I said, I was talking to, I think it was Mark Bell or someone, and they're like, "It's the UFC nice." I'm like, "It's real nice," but I'm like, "It's not Rocky in the barn." You know what I mean? So now I know why a lot of the guys go home and they train in their shithole gyms. Like Matt Brown is somewhere in Ohio right now in a cave, you know, chewing rocks. That's what you got to do.
It's worked out to us. It's been a really good destination training site. Now, we do have local fighters that they live in and they train in there all day long. But we've got guys that are right down the street at Extreme Couture. And they love the fact that they can get into Extreme, which is like a big warehouse, and they can sweat.
It's Rocky in the barn.
Oh, yeah. There's no Rocky AC in the barn. In there. Bunch of savages.
Yeah.
You know. And
nobody cares who you are.
Of both worlds.
Yeah.
The same with, you know, when you got guys that come from out of town, they come down, and yes, it's shiny. It's the tile that's on the wall is like, you know, $700 a square foot kind of stuff. But they get access to ideas. They get access to diagnostics, which they may not have access to at home, and then they can return back to that.
Right.
But I agree, it's a fine line between, you do need a little bit of a dungeon where you can get in and tap into your inner savage, without being forced into that Dolph Lundgren lifestyle too much.
I think you need the barn. We all agree you need the barn, right? And it's like, you know, it's funny because even at Mark Bell's gym, he built like this gorgeous little palatial place, and I'm like, it's not like a shithole. It's not a dump. It's not a dump anymore.
It's not West Side.
It's not West Side, right? Yeah. So, you know, it's a lot of fun. I mean, having that as your home base has to be the most exciting, especially being associated with that brand that has done such a good job. And we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, amidst all this bullshit with COVID and everything else going on, and the looting and all the crap. The UFC, knock on everything, has done a great job still putting a product out there. Granted, you can't get the mass groups together, you can't get the fans together, but still, Bo, managing to put a product out there. I mean, you must be sick of getting tested, but
yeah, it's one of those things from a fan perspective and from a fighter perspective. Yes, it's a breath of fresh air to get the athletics world going, and to us to kind of be at the tip of the spear with that. But you know, it's tough. It's not easy navigating through all of these policies and procedures. Some that are city governed, some that are
I don't want to. No comment. Now we got the mask.
Yeah,
thing.
You know, and so exactly. So there's a lot that goes in, and it is daily. Our agility to be able to adjust daily to these rules that are coming at us so that fighters can still step in there and go and perform, it's nuts. But the fact that we absolutely can cross the finish line and get a product out, you know, that initiative starts with Dana, obviously. Then we have an amazing team from production all the way through, you know, athletic performance that allows us to orchestrate and do that. And that's been super cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think one of the
things leading up to it. So it is getting a little bit more exposure. It's a very difficult thing. And, you'll get every expert in dietetics and nutrition out there. They'll say, oh, it's easy to make weight. This is how it is such an individual thing how a person's metabolism functions.
I want to ask you this because listen, you're an expert, and I asked Rachel this. What's the craziest through your years, and you've been in this game long enough, what's the craziest thing you've seen on late night TV or just in life that's been pitched to you as exercise equipment?
Oh, goodness.
Come
That's
on.
a great question.
Yeah. Is it the Gazelle?
You know what? Okay, the Gazelle. Oh, man. I love, what's his name? Is it Tony?
Yeah, Little. What's his name?
Little.
Yeah,
Tony Little.
Tony Little.
Oh, I love that guy. How motivational is that
He's
guy?
amazing, but the products are a little zany.
Yeah, it's
a little zany.
I mean, it's a glorified elliptical, basically, but.
Like, who's walked in and said, Bo, I got just the thing.
That's what I was going to get at. Not so much like which toy or tool or whatever you want to call it, but how convinced professional athletes can get that thing is the thing. The sweat ab belts, I've seen those at least 300-400 times in my career. Athlete comes in, they give me this thing, I can feel it. Like, I can feel it melting the fat away from my midsection. And it's like, one, what the fuck's that got to do with performance? Two, you're lying to yourself. I can make you sweat in 40 seconds. What is it? You don't need the belt to do that. But the belts,
I know what you mean about the convince.
Oh, man.
Sold.
And it's in every aspect, right? It's in the performance aspect. Here's the new gadget that will do X, Y, and Z for you. It's in the recovery space now. Here's the perfect recovery tool. It'll help you do X, Y, and Z. And the sleep space. Here, if you want to sleep better, here's X, Y, and Z.
The clothes.
Oh, yeah. The clothes, the right monitor. It's rant. But I get it. There's people out there that are trying to innovate and they're trying to make a living. And every now and then, there's some good shit that comes out.
There is. No, there definitely is. I'm going to say something. You can tell me how stupid I don't care. I can take it. You can tell me how stupid I am. The Total Gym was one that I thought was a freaking good product. I'm like, this little thing with a ramp. I'm like, no, I'm not quite at the Total Gym phase of my life. And I know, Jay, everyone that's listening, you're going to shit all over me. But it's like, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. It's not cool. Bowflex is expensive. You know what I mean? Yep. Some products are just priced out of the universe, but I saw Chuck Norris on that motherfucker. Sold.
Hey, my dad, when I was 14 or 15 years old, my dad had a major back surgery. Had some discs fused together, that kind of stuff, and he couldn't. It would have been like he lived in the country. He's out in Giddings, Texas, outside of Austin, Texas. 90 minutes to get to PT if you wanted to do PT 5 times a week. Gave him a Total Gym. It just happened to be that thing. And it was, you could do some really simple body weight. And if you needed to load it a little bit, he could adjust the incline on that.
You're not going to make gains. It's not, it's not meant for that.
Mark Bell in, and Mark's going to go push his bench records or anything with that thing.
You might find a way with some bands or some bullshit. Yeah, for sure.
But, some stuff like that's got a utility depending on the population. But then there's stuff that just flat out just robs people of their wallets. That has no.
I'm trying to think. There's been that ab rocker. That's one. But has anyone ever come in the gym or said, like, we got to get a meeting with you, and they get a meeting? So you get in the building, and then they're showing you, like, something. You have to name the company. I know the type of person. You don't want to name the brand. But, like, has that ever happened where you're just like, what the fuck am I looking at here?
And honestly, if they are a tech brand in particularly, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt and at least look, because even if they haven't
you can't risk them walking out.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if they hadn't hit it right on the bullseye, it may open up doors to then research other companies in that space. But yeah, we get drowned in them. Oh, this is the new thing. This is for vestibular stimulation. Here, try this thing. And then it does.
Yeah, what was it? Tony had Real World Tactics. Tony had some wacky headphones.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, bro, they work. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yep. He goes, you put them on for 20 minutes and you can lift like a house.
You do your normal warm-up in them, and you're so neurally stimulated, you increase by 20%.
I'm like, what does it play? Like Van Halen or some shit on there?
It doesn't play anything. It's sending invisible waves that you can't see or feel, and you hope that that's what they're doing.
It's like those wave bracelets.
Oh,
that has to be the worst part in some ways of the job, because I say this all the time to people. The hardest thing is to sit there and nod, especially after you checked out, when you're just like, so you get pitched these crazy ideas, and being where you are and who you work for, the line starts outside the frickin' parking lot for that.
Oh, especially, Dana says, hey, I got this guy in town.
Got a friend of mine.
He's got this awesome thing. Can you guys come check it out? Yes, sir.
You have to say yes.
100%.
Of course.
Yeah, we'll come check it out.
But then when it's a friend of a friend, it's going to be some type of snake oil. Could be.
The other thing is placebo is a hell of a thing. And when you talk professional athletics, as superstitious as some of them get, and placebo is a hell of a thing. So you don't ever want to rule everything out, especially if they have a belief built on, hey, this thing helps me sleep at night.
What's the product most people overlook? That's what I was going to get at. That, like, it might be a little bit placebo.
I'm going to give it to you.
I'm
going to give it. You know what it is? It's called consistency.
Oh, yeah.
That is the product that is overlooked.
100%.
It's how consistent, first off, whatever you've employed into your strategy for preparation, how consistently have you put that to work, cycling in and out of it, to actually measure how fucking influential it is over your training. We have guys, they'll do stuff for 6 weeks, like, this is awesome, and then they never do it again. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, what about that thing that was awesome? Now you're on to the other thing. But some of that is also the obsessive compulsiveness of professional athletes.
Yeah.
They can latch onto something, man, they can get so obsessive, and they'll perfect it.
I want to come back to consistency, but I want you to tell me, like, a real product. Like, is it because I want to go out and buy it? Like, is it the cotton pajamas?
I'll get back to why consistency is a product. You know what? People don't want to buy the truth. You can't sell the truth, and the truth is
Hydroxycut, Xanadrin.
Products that are overlooked. I think this day and age, we're getting really, really good at the work, at the stimulus. Everybody works hard. Mm-hmm. You're not gonna find fighters will say it, professional athlete, I'm gonna outwork that guy. They all work hard. I've seen them all. It's unbelievable the amount of effort and work. This day and age, it comes into how you're managing your work so you can actually get some adaptation out of it. And then how are you managing recovery time? This day, it used to be you could outwork your opponent because you had access to better equipment, you had more training time, that kind of thing. Nowadays, it's okay, once the training's done, who's better at navigating the recovery space? Who's got better sleep habits? Who's got, less of the shitty nightlife habits and all the things that deteriorate training stimulus? And so in that space, there are a lot of things, both on the supplemental side, supplemental foods and sports supplements, along with things like Normatec compression pants and different cold water immersion techniques and tactics.
I was going to say beds.
That's a big one. I don't know if
the value, the cost ratio.
Yeah, and if you've seen the spike in these companies that do these mail-out beds, like they'll send up the lull bed and all these kind of things,
You'll sleep like a baby.
It's starting to boom, yeah. The only thing is, when it comes to sleep, like it's kind of a preferential thing as well. Some people like firm, some people like soft, some people don't know, and you just got a bed showing up.
I'm just amazed how they got so much cheaper. But I was going to bring that up because you can buy like a sleep number for like $1,500 now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like when your grandmother had one years ago, maybe, or you were in the hospital. That shit used to be like $5,000.
It's crazy. As technology gets smaller and smaller, it gets cheaper. Like I can remember in like 1982, we got our first VCR. That thing looked like a monster PC.
You're showing our age.
And then, fast forward, now that doesn't exist anymore. And my kids have this little box that's doing 17 different things. You can watch DVDs, you can watch
They don't even have to have anything anymore.
Video games, you can download them. Yeah.
You're just talking to the remote. Hey, put on.
There you go.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, listen, I asked these things.
Even when you look at wearables and stuff, it used to be, okay, you got to strap this thing on. It's got to be in a bra. You got to wear it all. Now we're down to things like an Oura Ring. Which is just, you slip that on, you wear it, you sleep in it, it's tracking your sleep, it's tracking heart rate variability throughout the day.
Is that helpful though? Really?
It's case by case. It really depends. And also, the athlete has to have an interest in using the information. If they don't want to use the information,
it's pointless.
It behooves you to track all that shit.
Yeah, I was talking about that a lot with Matt Brown about like the use of film now and how films, I would have to say films become huge now the last 5 or 10 years in the UFC. Before it used to be like just get in the ring and fuck around, but now the availability of being able to go back to a catalog of a guy's fights, you can do a lot of film work now.
Not to mention practice. When you're looking at practice film, you want to look at your own practice film. It historically has been a thing where you might have one coach standing on the side of the cage with an iPhone or a phone, video and little clips here and there. But now we got guys and girls they're filming entire practices so they can better analyze what they're doing. Not to mention, you can spend some practice time on analysis, feedback, and then employing new strategies versus just always getting your practice reps from playing punch face or doing live rounds. Which fighters, historically, they're classic chronic overtrainers to the point where it's detrimental. They have a hard time stepping in the cage close to 100% of their physical best. So when it starts to do that, when you start to deteriorate like your physical qualities, you got to manage your time a little bit better. It's still not uncommon now to hear of guys saying, I spar 5 and 6 times a week. If you talk to most of the experienced guys, that's insane. And then some guys will do that out of camp. It's dude, you're taking concussions out of camp for no reason right now. You could study a little film. You could work on your techniques. You could expand your education into other martial arts as well. As more dynamic and well-rounded as this game gets, it still is really funny to hear fighters that are like, I'm going to stand and bang, bro. That's what I do, and that's all I'm going to do.
Caveman.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, what happens when they start clinching? They never won't get a chance because I'm going to bang them.
See, you used to be able to get away with that, though. We've talked a lot about the evolution of the UFC on here, and it's written, it's out there. When you were a one-discipline guru, right, stepping in the ring, you could get away with whatever your tactic you employed was. Now that there's such an emphasis on the Muay Thai, the jiu-jitsu, the wrestling. You have kind of those three colliding a little bit with the dirty boxing and clinching in there. So you have those four that have become like the mainstays. You have to have a little bit of both. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying, Coach? You got to have a little bit of both now.
Especially to survive inside the top 5. You're down past like the bottom 25, you get out of there, you can get away with some of that. And that's how we see people elevate themselves. But then when they start to creep inside the top 10, the top 5, and they see more well-rounded, when someone has an answer for that thing that you're really good at, then it's like, oh shit, what's my plan B? So now that he can answer that and I can't, my offense isn't working there, now what?
And I was talking about this with Coach Casey and Coach Casey Halstead and a few other guys, and we talked about it. We said all fighting, whether you have a firearm or whatever you have, is a management of distance. That's all it is. A blade, a gun, it's all a management of distance. You look at guys like John Jones, they manage distance so freaking well. They never, and he's at a stage of his career where that's what he should be doing.
Yeah.
So he manages distance, manages the rounds, manages the fight, and he manages to win every time. Yep. And it's the same thing whether you have a firearm, a blade, everything. If somebody has a blade and you don't want to be close. You don't want to be close. Yep. You know, if someone has a firearm, you can't run faster than a bullet.
Yep.
Fact. Yep. So, you know, you have to train for those things and you have to prepare yourself. And especially now where they're using the smaller octagon, everything's a little more intimate, everything's a little tighter. It's made it really fun to watch. And we were talking about this when we were walking a little bit yesterday. I wouldn't be surprised if Dana stuck with that.
You know, a lot of people don't notice, but over the years, depending on the venue, we've had to cycle in that 25-foot octagon. And so that's one of the things, as soon as matchups happen, we're like, where's the venue? Where's it at? You know, what's this little theater down here by
you mean Red Rock? Not Red Rock.
By the Palm. We've hosted some fights in. I forget the name of it.
Yeah, I know.
It's right there by the Palm.
I know the one you mean. It'll come to me.
Is it the Park Theater?
Park MGM or whatever.
Oh, what's that thing? Anyway, that we always have to put a 25-footer in there because it's a small, quaint little thing. The stands
Intimate.
are right on. It's awesome. It's an awesome venue.
Is it not Regal? No, what is it? I know the name of it.
I forget the name of it.
No, it's going to come to me. It'll bother me too.
But so what happens, that just should factor into the preparation. Look, it will be tighter. It will be smaller. We need to make sure we're understanding that. And the coaches typically do a really good job on strategizing their game plans. I mean, if you saw, who was it, Blades and Volkov just a couple weeks ago in that 25-footer, I mean, they look like the Rock'em Sock'em robots. You got these two giant figures inside this tiny little ring going at it. And, you know, if your footwork and that kind of thing is on, then you're going to be susceptible to blast doubles over and over and over again. Or someone that's a high-charging, big overhand, you know, a Francis Ngannou that just loves to throw, you know, big looping overhand. There's just nowhere to move laterally in that thing. Whereas for some of the smaller, like high-speed scramblers, you look at the men's 125, the women 115ers, they do the same thing they would do in the 30-foot octagon. There just ain't as much room to run around, so you see the increase in the number of scrambles go up. So it makes for a much more exciting fight.
Who, I have to ask the difficult questions, and you have to give me names. Who's one of the most freakishly talented human beings that's come through that you've seen? And maybe they didn't train the hardest. I'm not saying they trained the hardest.
Yep.
But freakishly talented, like you were just like, whoa.
In terms of talent for the sport.
Athleticism, just overall.
I mean, right at the top of the list, people that they kind of come out of nowhere or just jump out in my memory are Zhang Wei Li, 100%, the current women's 115 champ. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is very adaptable. She moves well. She's obviously a seasoned champ and striker. Wonder Boy Thompson, like just unbelievably talented. Learned how to adapt his game and had some great success. You know, he's been up and down, but you know, when I first got here, one of the first tours that we did was and he actually stuck around and trained a little bit was Lyoto Machida. And bro, that dude has so many ways to put hurt on you. Like it's just impressive to see how deep some of the skill sets can get.
An endless barrage of weapons.
Yeah, it's just like, man, it just that to me is what's impressive. Like any sport I've worked with, if I've worked with a multi-athlete in track and field, to see them excel and be so good at so many different events, to me that's crazy.
So I had a friend, and I know you can't name names the other way because it's not right. We won't be that cunty. But I had a friend who said to me, and he's remaining nameless, played in the NFL, and he said he's so happy for Tony Romo in the booth, but he said he never met a more talented person that if he worked a little bit harder, he would have won multiple playoff games and probably a Super Bowl. But he said he never did his homework, never studied. That to me is the most frustrating thing as a coach.
Yeah.
When you're a coach, when you have that, and you must see that in abundance come through the door because the turnover.
No doubt. The exception is when you see that crossover of the ultimate talent that meshes with the ultimate work ethic, right? That's the exception.
Dream.
They do happen, and they're amazing to see. They're the unicorns. They're the Michael Jordans, they're that mentality, the obsessive-compulsive mentality, and they are typically the ones to go on to be extremely successful and set records that don't even get tickled for a couple of decades at a time, but the majority, because it's human nature, the majority of people, they will never get into that echelon. They will never get into that level of consistent performance, consistent grind, consistent good habits to where they can maintain that level for so long. So that it's just I think it's a byproduct of human nature. We're flawed. We got a lot of them. There's a few that have been able to, whether it's mentally or they have the physical capacity to water out a lot of those flaws, and they can continue to excel at a level that no one else can touch.
Yeah, to me, you look out there, and the majority of us are very flawed in that sense. We operate in seasons. We have seasons where we go hard and we train. And you brought this up earlier, and I told you we'd come back. It comes down to consistency. Yeah. And I tell people all the time, whether through my journey, whether it was in the firearms business, whether it was in fitness, whether it was podcasting, like I did 61 episodes in 64 days during COVID. And people are like, what the? I had people messaging me towards the end. They're like, how did you? And I said, I just believe in waking up every day and being productive. To me, there's, I've said it 1,000 times. You can only control 2 things in life, period. I don't care what anybody tells me. You can control how loyal you are and what time you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
That's it.
No doubt.
Everything else will change. So I always tried to get up early, get a jump on everybody. And it's cost me a lot. You sacrifice. So the hard thing to explain to people is what you give up to get that, to achieve that. And I don't think you'll approach any champion, anyone who's been great. There's a period of insane selfishness. And as a coach, you see that. There's a period of insane self-loathing. We're flawed. There's a lot of flawed individuals that are at the top of their game. And you see that, it's not... I think people get a misread on people. You're dealing with like you take John Jones, right? Trains so hard, commits himself so hard to his craft. There's a guy who's so dialed in so many ways, comes from a family of immense overachievers, right? Mm-hmm. And he has his brushes with the law, right? He has his shit that happens. It happens. I think it's just because honestly he's burnt. Yeah. He's going so hard at a high level. And he has to be on, and people don't realize today, whether it's with social media, and I know nobody's trying to, make excuses for anybody. We can pick on anybody. It's so hard to be like a Tom Brady. And that's why we saw, like, with the Jordan documentary, a lot of people saw a side of Jordan, and I know they didn't know, and how intense he really was in practice, grabbing people by the throat, and he was saying, I'm trying to prepare you guys for the Lakers, for the Celtics, for the Pistons, to go through this. And you think...
And to dominate them.
Yeah. And you think anything I'm going to do to you is going to be less than what they'll do to you. And he was right.
Yep.
But what scares me, Bo, and this gets to a greater topic, is we're going to an era now where, and I'm going to say it, this isn't Bo saying it, it's the pussification of America, right? Yep. And I said this the other day to someone, everybody needs a cookie, everybody needs a prize, everybody needs something. And I think the UFC is really showing people every week that not everybody gets a cookie. And sometimes you got to get hit in the mouth. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that has to happen. But that's part of the problem with society today in general. And we're not sociologists, I get that. But in general, I think the UFC has become a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. And I wish Dana would talk about that a little more. Yeah. Just a little note to Dana. I wish he would, because I think the world needs that. Yeah. I genuinely believe that.
Yeah, it's... It trickles through, it trickles through life in every facet. Every coach that you've probably ever played under as a kid or worked around, you get your coaches always have these like catchphrases, right? You're like, I remember that coach used to say that.
And they use the same ones every year, especially
one of the first ones for what, I don't know where I heard it, I don't know, but one of the first things, I still have athletes from 2000 that will tell me, I remember you saying this, is the only thing I'm prejudiced towards in life, like it's not a race, it's not an ethnicity, it's not a religion, it's laziness. That's the only thing that I truly despise in life, because it's something that you can control. You can control your effort. You can control even someone with disabilities or someone that is less fortunate than someone else. You can control your effort. You can control how much you put into things. And so that's kind of been I used to have t-shirts I would give guys in the summer. If you showed up 100% attendance for summer training when it was not required, you got a t-shirt that said, I hate lazy people. And that was the thing that I wanted to hammer home. And it kind of goes into how I parent and how I work with my coworkers. I don't want to let my coworkers down. I want to overachieve for them so they can achieve that thing that they're working on. My kids, I don't want my kids to think that it's okay to do the bare minimum to slide by. I want the attitude to be like, what can I achieve next? What's the next big hill to climb? That's kind of the mentality. Now, look, I'm not saying that everyone has to be Cameron Haynes. Not everyone has to be, a five-star general in our military or anything like that. But you can get up and give a little bit of effort. You can, when you got an extra little bit, you can lend that to someone. You can lend a helping hand. You can provide some assistance. You can go above and beyond in your job without expecting a bonus for it. You can go above and beyond without expecting an extra pat on the back, that cookie that you were talking about. And it's just about being a better human race. It's being a stronger race, more difficult to kill, more difficult to defeat. Like
more capable.
More capable. Yeah.
More capable.
If you have that kind of work ethic, imagine I still believe we're one of the most intellectual countries in the world. Imagine if effort levels did start to see an increase from the fundamental educational level to where we are now. Who knows what we could achieve? But, when you have a large majority that cut whatever corner they can cut to take a shortcut, or they're looking for the easiest way to get the same amount of work done. No, it's like,
I think everybody will look for an easy way. It's human nature. But I think the reality is do you put greater pressure on yourself because you took somewhat of an easy way? So for example, whether it's PEDs or whether it's anything, somebody did put greater pressure on yourself to go out and actually reach the goal, because think about how many people who took maybe PEDs but didn't hit 80 home runs or didn't hit 100. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So go, if you're going to do like maybe our parents would say, if you're going to go out and do it right, go out and go 100.
The other thing, when it comes to any corner, I mean, we'll stay on PEDs since we're on that. I mean, it's only going to give you 10 to 15%.
Tops.
So you got to work your ass off to get within striking distance. Everyone's like, oh, Ronnie Coleman, he just got on the podcast and he talked about how all the drugs that he took and this and that. He had to get within 90 to 95% of that shit on his own before that other stuff would put him over the top.
As you were saying, when you get to that level, Ronnie was on in bodybuildings, I know something about. He was doing a lot naturally. Because Ronnie, by nature, I know a lot of inside stories with Ronnie about eating, fried food, everything, because he just didn't know how to diet. Yeah. He just didn't know how to do those things, and he meant it when he talked about it on that show. Yeah. He was one of those guys. He wasn't dialed in. So he had an enormous amount of genetics and gifts, and he still does to this day. For a guy who can barely move, he's still freakish looking.
In his 50s, yeah.
In his 50s.
And I would say this some of it's got to be regional, because I grew up in Louisiana, and I saw those monsters walk around all the time, and I knew them. I'm like, dude, you don't do anything. You don't work. But you got that. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, and the amount of bodybuilders, there's a lot that come out of the Northeast and the South, primarily. They move west, but they come out of primarily Jersey North, and then the South, primarily. Yeah, my wife was an elite level weightlifter for over 10 years. Her first Olympic trials was in 2004. She competed in 2008, and at the 2012 trials was on a few different world teams, and was a clean athlete her entire career, and always just missing, international podiums and things along those lines, Pan Am Games or World Championships. And you look and you reflect, like, what would 15% add to that? And if you did the math, it put her right there in the mix. It put her right there, gold, silver. And we had other teammates and colleagues, same kind of thing. So it's really that choice if you're going to do that extra thing that kind of puts you over that. But you got to have, whether it's the genetic piece or the work ethic, to get you within that 85% striking
you're
distance.
never going to – the list of guys who've done any PED or any type of enhancement is – and not got even in that top 5, Bo. It's an even bigger list.
Huge.
That's a bigger list. It's a combination of things, especially today, because it's a combination of your business savvy, your ability to sell tickets or to move the needle in business. So you have to have it all. You have to have a little of everything.
A lot of mental fortitude as well. If you put your body through all that, what you think is all that, and you've stepped over that, whatever you want to call it, ethical boundary of now I'm gonna use a PED. To still find out, holy shit, I got to work that much more to still get up in there, you know.
And
that can be a crusher if you're not mental fortitude.
I don't know how guys did it year in and year out. So I would go to Texas, where Ronnie trained was Metroflex Gym, right? Yep. Legendary gym. I trained there with Branch quite a bit. I've been down there a million times. Tony and I have been down there, trained there. The list is long, but how many times I've trained there. And I remember leaving there 110 degrees of heat, Bo, and I'm like, how the fuck did guys do this for 15 years? Like, I'm like... You know, and
it's
humid, hot, sticky. The workouts were punishing. I remember doing legs and I could barely walk. And I played sports at a good level. I played all that, you know. I remember like walking in and just the heat hit you like a blast furnace walking in a Metro. And that's right up there with the top 8 gyms. The only gym on my list I haven't hit's Temple. I'd love to go to Temple Gym in England. That was Dorian's.
Yeah, Dorian.
Yeah, but you know, it's like, whoa, this is going to be for real. It's like you said, it's like running with Cam Hanes or doing something. When you're around the best of the best, you know that no matter what, everything aside, they're going to take it to the max because that's how they approach everything. Yep. You know, when I wanted to do a podcast studio, for example, I'm not putting myself in that category. I know what's out there and I know what some of the top ones are doing. I wanted to put in a 2,000 square foot warehouse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Most guys are like, I'll put it in the side of my couch. I'm like, fuck that. We're going to get a building. We're going to do it right. And if you're going to do something, it feels good to go all the way and fail than never having had gone all the way at all.
No doubt about that. Yeah.
No doubt, right?
It's funny you talk about like learning from the best of the best. I've had this conversation with Bert Soren. Yep, subject matter experts. I've had this conversation with Bert Soren over and over because we talk about. Hey, Bert. Yeah, we talk about as I'm staring at this rack over here. We talk about like the guy has learned how to build a bow from John Dudley. He's been able to go and make knives with Neo Kamimura, and like it's like he's just had a chance to do things with the best of the best in each of those. And it's like I started thinking about that. And I'm like, man, you know what? From now on, when it comes to this martial arts thing, when I want to ask a question about boxing, I'm gonna wait till I'm around some of the best boxing minds. You know, we have different trainers from different gyms come around all the time, and just being selective about weight. But that guy has actually been around, and so that's the guy I want to.
It's funny you bring up Burke because when I had him on, I actually I never got the opportunity to really express my respect for him for what he's doing and how he's molding all these worlds, which is something that has been near and dear to my heart. And it was Rachel Balkovic who brought this up. I said, why do you want to, we were talking, I don't know if it was on the show or offline. I said, why do you want to do jiu-jitsu all of a sudden? And she said, because I just want to be more capable. And the term capable started coming back to me. And it's just about wanting to be good. And you bring up SMEs. It's something that was burned into my soul from Dom Rosso, the Navy SEAL. Dom said, too many people don't do things that are purpose-driven, and they don't do things that, they don't target the best that they can find. So like even in shooting, people say to me, I want to learn how to shoot. I say, find someone at the range that's like a pro shooter or the best, like a golf pro, find someone and start there. And then as you progress, progress, learn, try different things. And there's a learning curve, right? It's like finding a martial art, right? You may not love jiu-jitsu. It might not be ideal for you. Try boxing, try something else, try Muay Thai. Find what you love first, and then you can add those little puzzle pieces. Yeah. But find, and I say that the reason
sometimes they're a gateway drug.
Yeah. And the reason I put bumpers on it and say, find the best person you can find in your gym, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because not everybody has access to some of the people you may have access to, I may have access to, or so on and so forth. But start there, and chances are they know someone, and then they know someone, and you can climb that pyramid pretty quickly. But when you're around SMEs, the thing I always tell everybody, Bo, is your learning curve adjusts so much quicker. because they're boiling off all the fat.
Yeah. There's cheap knowledge and there's expensive knowledge. Cheap knowledge is when you got to learn from all your own mistakes and you got to pay for those mistakes and all that shit. Cheap knowledge is, that's the expensive knowledge. The cheap knowledge is, yes, when you can get around those SMEs, like you said, they've already boiled the fat off. They've already learned from those mistakes, and it's a refinement, and your learning curve is fast, but then your ability to adapt beyond that too is a hell of a lot quicker. You've just gone from, the first grade to working on your PhD because you've been around someone that has already expedited all those levels. They created all that. They created that knowledge base. And what a fortunate thing to get around some of those minds, because it gives you a greater appreciation for some of the things. So I used to be notorious. I had 101, I still do, but I had 101 different hobbies, all kinds of stuff, music related, training related, home do-it-yourself stuff. Like I've just always had little silly hobbies, but I wasn't exceptional at any of them. And not until, I would say, in the last 10, 15 years, as I've met people like the Bert Sorens of the world, or, other, industry influencers, that I've started to take a step back. Like, you know what? Let me drop these 5 hobbies. Let me focus on these 3 and get really good at them by studying from these SMEs in that area. And it takes you in a deeper dive. You get a little bit more spiritual feel to it, and it's a lot more fulfilling when you're actually good at it. You're not just a dabbler.
Bert does a great job of hiding it in marketing. That's seriously.
Be legendary.
Yeah. And when it's funny because he and I have talked a lot offline about this. I had the Instagram and everything else, but when I started the podcast, it was more, I had this Rolodex of people, and I wanted to spend time with them all, but I didn't have a great excuse to. Like, I really didn't have a great excuse to hang out with you, right? I mean, unless I was walking through the UFC, hey, how you doing? How's that cheeseburger? Awesome. I can get you in here and I can pick your brain and take that knowledge. And I went on a job interview once and I said this to them, and they sat back in the chair and I think about it. They said, geez, you have a couple of gaps in your work history. I said, yeah. I said, well, I have a podcast and I have my show. And they said, really? I said, yeah. I said, but if I didn't have those gaps, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, because it helped me build not just the platform, but the knowledge and the understanding that I had now. And we're in a new era, right? It's a whole new ball game. And I was having this conversation, and I said to someone, they have kids, I said, the best thing you could do for your kids today is at 18, instead of being the person was very obsessed with sending their kid to college, which I think is a great thing. But I said, the best thing you could do for them is start them a business so they can learn to fail. T-shirt business, online, whatever. Start them a business. Hand them a business, something, so they can do a little trial and error. Because you can only, like you said, the long knowledge is learning by doing.
And that's a thing that used to be so common. I can remember having a lemonade stand. I remember pushing my lawnmower up and down the neighborhood, cutting grass for, and maybe I'm not aware, but you don't see as much of it in little kids. I mean, I was pushing a lawnmower 8 years old down this, 10 blocks from my house to go make, $7 to cut someone's grass.
We shoveled.
Yeah, there you go.
Northeast, shoveled.
We would get overgrown, or we were spraying pesticide, keep the mosquitoes away. But you don't see as much of that anymore. I think there's a lot of validity to what you just said in terms of that whole failure aspect, not just showing up at Little League and getting a trophy without winning anything kind of thing.
That'll never go away, Bo, because that won't go away anytime soon because it's so burned in our society. And I think it puts a burden on the parents. It forces the parents more, which is a hard thing, to teach their kids about failure. But I think the pendulum will swing at some point, because here's the thing. Everybody is so obsessed with making every kid feel special. Everybody's special. Everybody gets a cookie. That at home, the smart parents, like I know Coach Casey, probably you, Eddie, eventually, as his get older, you have to teach failure. You have to. You don't want to. You fight it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want that.
You don't want to see them hurt.
You don't want to see them hurt, but you have to. Explain failure to them. Have that conversation.
Two things that me and my wife, we talk about openly, that we try to make sure. Look, we might be shitty parents in 700 other different categories, but 2 things. Number 1 is any time that I'm around my wife in front of my 2 sons, I want their only vision is to see me smiling with her, hugging her, kissing her, opening a door for her, showing her just the utmost respect and if she asks me to do something, I'm doing it as fast as I possibly can, responding immediately, because I want them to think that that's how you treat women. That's how you
don't want to plant a training scar.
That's it. And then number 2 is failure. How do we react when we lose in that game that we're playing? How do we react when you tried to swim across the pool and you didn't make it all the way? Are we going to pout and throw a fit? Are we going to get up and try again? Are we going to crush it and then celebrate our successes, but then also teach them to reflect on, hey, remember now, you just actually came up short right before that. So remember what it feels like to then push again and actually achieve it. Remember.
See, we're in Vegas, so we can get it really right as not just parents but as friends, because we can gamble.
Yeah.
So you can lose twice. You can learn the lesson real harsh, real quick. Yeah. And when I grew up in an Italian household, so you bet on everything. You bet on a cockroach running across the floor. So you play quarters, you play this, you play that. And growing up, I grew up in East Boston, which is you have South Boston, East Boston, North End, Charlestown, in that area. I mean, it was a cutthroat neighborhood. I mean, they take your last dollar. They don't care, and that teaches you a lot. And the term I use a lot, Bo, is not enough people have had their head pushed down in the dirt. And what I say all the time is, I remember from high school, I remember 2 or 3 things, but one of the things I remember the most is pushing a sled. I felt like I pushed the sled across the entire, state of Massachusetts, because all we ever did at practice, push a sled. Yeah. And it would be snowy, wet, shitty, soupy. There's just not enough kids today that just want to get out and push a sled. Yeah. Everybody wants the cookie, no sled.
My big slap in the face in high school was, I came up with an amazing class of teammates and stuff. Our freshman football team went undefeated. Sophomore, we turned around the varsity program and just had a ton of success. It was really good. And I remember my junior year, I was starting. I was an outside linebacker, and starting to get a lot of leadership roles with the defense and really getting in good with the coaches and things like that. My senior year, a kid came up who was a freshman going into his sophomore year, stud kid, stud athlete, started getting a lot of playing time, taking a lot of my, and only thing I could sit back and say is well, I understand, because he's better than I am. I mean, I look right at him I can't do that thing that he's doing right there. I tried to, but I can't do it at the level he's doing it at. And for me, it was a huge lesson in appreciation, 1, understanding a greater mission, 2, that this is my team, and my team's more successful if that dude's doing my job. And then the third was, I started to reflect, and this was some good advice that I got from my parents, my mother and my father. We're okay, have you asked yourself what you can do to help that kid? He's younger than you. He might be better, but have you asked, what can I do to support that kid? What can I? And so I started trying to do that, man. I started trying to do that. And I felt like a badass, because I was able to talk to this kid that was better than me in almost every aspect of the game. And later on, I actually ended up starting getting more playing time, and because I could influence how that kid was playing. We actually shifted our defense. We started playing multiple linebacker sets, because they knew I could communicate with that kid on the field, and he would follow me around. So he had the experience that would help out with this new missile that we had. And so it was a huge lesson for me. And it taught me that I don't always have to lead from the front. I can lead from the back, and I can instruct, and I can guide.
But that's rare today still. That's rarer than the consistency point you brought earlier. Is normally when somebody has, and you grew up in a Mexican household, I assume.
My dad was Mexican. My mom was Caucasian, and just a gritty redneck family from the South.
So perfect. So you grew up in that house. I grew up in an Italian house. In those houses, we grew up, don't tell anybody if you have anything. If you have anything, because someone's going to want to take it from you, right? Yeah. So in the world today, you're almost trained to not help, right? So it's hard, you grow up with that kind of weird culture where, you kind of protect what's yours. Everything's so it's rare to find someone that's willing to give the knowledge, to dispense the knowledge, to give people the secrets, the formula, to get people to the next level, to get them where they need to be. And I think it was even on that Ronnie Coleman documentary. I think it was Kevin Levrone said, Ronnie kept coming in second or third or fourth. He wasn't cracking, but everybody knew he was about to crack it. And Kevin sat him down, and they just had a few drinks, and they had some pizza, and he goes, he just relaxed. And he goes, I swear, when he relaxed, all that tension, all that stress, the water just came out of his body, and he just cooled out.
And a little bit of dehydration.
A little bit of dehydration, probably from the alcohol. But it's true. Not enough people want to help the person next to them. when we see a lot of that in the riots and everything else, people get they get primal real quick, almost like I want to protect what's mine. Yep. So we struggle mentally to not just give back and be good people. It's not to say our parents or anybody aren't great people. It's just you always protect what's yours initially, and that knowledge and that IP is one of those things, and you take it very seriously. And that's why consulting or coaching, a lot of times people are like, what's the value, right? Like what they don't want to pay for it, right? Like they don't see. So a lot of coaches struggle across the country to make money, but you're like, I'm trying to take 20 years of what I have up here in my brain and give it to
Share
you.
it with you. Yeah. It's interesting. I think as a species, what you mentioned in terms of we have a hard time sharing and giving up things. That's really that's our demise.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
If that doorway opened up, I mean, look at all these barriers we're running into right now as a society. Half those don't exist if we don't have failure to communicate, if we don't have failure to appreciate, if we don't have failure to share. And it starts with leadership, man. You look at how things are governed and how policies are made. We don't have to get into all of that, but you understand.
We can. I just don't want to put you in that spot.
Because I'm definitely not prepared to dive into that. But it really boils down to there's not enough appreciation between different layers of the species to give people a slice of the pie. Let them have ownership of part of this. It's, there's one side of it that wants to own everything, and they don't want anyone else to have a perspective of any of it. And it's sad, but that's our demise.
It's definitely our demise. There's no question, because the willingness to dispense knowledge, give advice, pull people up to the next level is rare. I think in some ways we get it incredibly right, and then I think when we get it wrong, we get it drastically wrong.
Yeah. My question is always, what do you risking losing? There's enough out here for all of us to feed on. There's enough for us to feast on.
Well, we're very, like I brought up earlier, we're very selfish people, number one. Number two, now with the social media platforms and other things, attention is the motherfucker of all things, Bo. Attention. No doubt. And everybody wants their 5 minutes. Everybody wants their place in the sun. Everybody wants their spot in the universe. Everybody wants to peck on their piece of bread. Everybody needs their moment. And instead of being, sitting back in the cut and waiting for that moment to come or that right opportunity to strike, I believe and prescribe to, if you want something, you have to go out and take it. You got to be vigilant. You got to want it. Yeah. But at the same time, people are so, I would say, fixated on what they have going on that they don't take a minute to understand what is going on with somebody else. And that's what I feel, in my opinion.
Yeah, empathy is lost.
Leads to a lot of not just suicides, just taking a minute, because we're all obsessed with our phones. We're on our phones. We're stuck in our computer screens. That's why I love podcasting. I think in many ways getting together and just having a conversation. Yeah. You can, in today's day and age, you can learn a lot about somebody spending an hour on the mic with them. Yeah. You can learn a lot about their mindset. I believe that. Yeah. A lot about where they're at, and you can walk away feeling pretty good saying, hey, they're a shitbag, or hey, they're a pretty good dude. I spent some time with them. And you bring up, people that are overachievers that have that IP, whether it's financially, politically, everything else. I just think a lot of people lack the testicular fortitude to really say what's going on and what's happening for fear of being canceled, cancel culture, for fear of backlash, for fear of repercussion, for fear of alienation. Yeah. And I think that contributes to the here's an ice cream, here's a cookie, here's a thing. And I think in general, it's going to be hard to break through that. It's going to be hard to cut through that in so many ways over time. I don't know that I have the formula, but I think what's going to happen is, I'm trying to say this carefully without getting political, you have to kind of draw a line through the sand. You're going to have two sects of people. The people that want it all without doing any hard work, and I know that that's not what you're saying, the people that want everything without doing the hard work, versus the people that want to work hard, want to work smart, but maybe just need someone from that other upper bridge to just kind of pull them up a little bit. There's a huge movement right now I see across the spectrum in sports, life, everything that I think is going to adjust this curve. Whether or not it comes is going to be another story, because sooner or later, people are going to have to say what's real. And I think, I'm going to say it in this way. I think we saw it with Ricky Gervais at I think it was the Emmys, when he came out and started talking about the Harvey Weinstein thing and everything else. I think at the end of the day, you just got to say it. Yeah. Like, hey, motherfucker, you screwed up. Like, hey, this is what happened. I think society as a whole is going to course correct, and I think that it will. It's going to take time, but I think by and large, this isn't. I don't think you or I are trying to say, just give people something for nothing. No but I think for the most part, there's a lot of people that work really hard but just need a little guidance.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's what I think.
That's a good perspective. It's. I think we get stuck so much in this black and white. You got to be on this side, you got to be on that side, and there's so much reason in the middle, and it's hard to find what the right balance of it is. But it's I guess getting to a point where as a society we're more accepting of what some of that middle is. You still have your belief structure, and you can be on one side or the other, but having a little bit of empathy and what you mentioned earlier, thinking about what that other person's going through, think about 100%. Their context and their circumstance. And
the cancel culture's got to go. Yeah. That's what has to go, Bo, first. Yeah. And the reason I say that isn't because I don't think some people should deal with repercussions, but the stuff that we see, people trying to pay the price for what they did 20 years ago, if we went into everybody's past 20 years, Bo,
I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
You know what I'm saying? If we went into that bag of worms, give me a break. And that's something that's gotten completely out of control. But I think it's reaching a tipping point. I think it's reaching a crossover. So I think that will shift, and I think that will be part of the shift. And I just think in life, like athletics, you have to kind of respect the past but learn from it, and adjust. And I think that we will. I think like we talked about the Chicago Bulls documentary. If half of that shit went on today, Phil and Michael were running that whole thing, the whole show. Yeah. Rodman going to Vegas for 3 days. It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
And that was awesome to watch because it was pre-social media, pre-availability of information. And I think everybody knew Jordan was a ruthless winner, but I don't think they knew to the extent, but he gave them insight. And I think somebody asked me, this is a great question. They said, what other team would you like to see that done on? And people figured I'd say the Patriots, right? Because I'm a huge Patriots fan. I said, actually, I'd love to see like the old Jimmy Johnson Cowboys. That would be a fucking team worth seeing it.
No doubt. Or teams like the Miracle team from hockey. It wasn't like these dudes just band together and decided we're going to work really hard, be the underdog, and we're going to crush the Kremlin. I'm sure there was some savagery that went on behind the scenes.
100%.
And getting those guys mentally ready to take this on, So, yeah, I think there's some great examples out there that would be that. The Cowboys definitely would be one. My dad would have loved that one. He's a diehard Cowboy fan.
I just wish we all could accept that we could say it was a different time. Yeah. You see what I'm saying about cancel culture and everything else? My high school coach still coaches, and he coaches a very prominent program now, so I don't want to get into that. But, I know the stuff he used to pull on us. We used to do triple sessions.
Yeah.
Pre-Corey Stringer. You can't do triple sessions anymore. No. We used to do crazy stuff. And I know looking back, he's like, I'm surprised they lived. I know there's a part of him that looks back and says, I know, because I've talked to him.
Yep.
But the culture we live in now, they want everyone to pay for their sins 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And that has to go. Because you learn from those. And they're what shapes not just your coaching philosophy or life philosophy. And sometimes you touch the pot and it's a little hot. But you can't go back 5 years later and say, we're going to make the pot hotter now.
Yeah. No.
It's not right.
No, not at all.
So I want to ask you before we get close to wrapping, who are some of the SMEs that have influenced you and shaped your coaching now and helped you form your philosophy for how you approach people and deal with it?
Yeah, in what we do, there's so many genres of expertise, right? So when I think in terms of strength and power, I look at icons like not only Louis Simmons, but a lot of those animals that came out of that household, they came out of that gym, and they all kind of carved their own paths, but they all had different contributions to the strength and power game. You know, in weightlifting and in Eastern Bloc literature, you know, the Verkhoshanskys and these types of, you know, of influencers, that they paved the way for some of the intellect. And I would say, while they may not have, that might not showcase how I build or prescribe plans or programs, it influenced on how I took the information in, and it influenced how much drive I had to want to learn more from some of the more modern people. From, you know, you look at things now, we have the cube method, the juggernaut method, you have West Side. There's so many different ways to pull from 5-3-1 and Windler's approach, and you know. But when I looked at strength and power, those were some of the ones that I tapped into. That were the information. If I dug deep enough, I could research it and I could understand where those trains of thought came from and how they were implemented and why they were effective. The same way when we look at Eastern Bloc, I was in track and field for a number of years, and how a lot of the Eastern Bloc countries approached throwing events and multi-events and how they periodized and set up their training. So then when you get into things like recovery, like Inigo Mojica is a big one from the country of Basque, who was one of the first to really pioneer and put a lot of thought and research into tapering and peaking for competitions. He primarily studied endurance events, but then he started cross-pollinating with other strength and power sport and events to try to derive methods for some of these other genres of sport. When you get into, you know, the combat sports, I mean, I was a huge Dan Gable fan as a kid, so that was kind of those were the people that I watched and studied. And then working for the Olympic Committee, as I came up, there were legends that I didn't even know about, but that I got to learn about through that area of employment. And, you know, the Brandon Slays and the guys that were of that 90s era, Rulon Gardner and all those guys. So when it came to learning more about combative grappling, because I worked with combative sports when I was with the Olympic Committee, those were my SMEs that I kind of went after that showed the way. And they not only told me, it gave me a snapshot of what was currently being effective, what they were doing and using right then, but a lineage of where it had come from. You know, again, a lot of that came from a lot of Eastern Bloc countries as well in terms of how they prepared and trained, not only freestyle, but Greco-Roman in particular. So, yeah, I mean, the list literally is endless, but I would say if you ask, okay, who's the biggest, it's my parents.
Right.
100%. My parents are the ones that gave me the open mind to listen to people. My parents are the one that told me, hey, you want some wisdom? The wisdom is shut your mouth, open up your ears, and get in front of people that are experienced in the things that you're pursuing.
I want to ask you this, and I almost forgot to ask you it. Do you think some guys do some, I don't want to say do it for the gram, but do you think some guys do some shit that's like they shouldn't be doing? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'll pick on I'll pick on Tony because he's my friend. So like I used to argue with Tony all the time. Like I don't see the point in doing deadlifts, which is a popular belief, right? Like unless you're competing, a lot of people will say the ratio for injury is too great. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And there are some people that have been critical of Cam for, you know, why is he running 50 miles? Does that make a lot of sense every day? Do you see that? How do you process that as a coach? Do you just say, hey, they're just working hard? What's the rule of thumb there?
So one of the things that I've learned 100%, and I believe in it, there is a different recipe for everyone, every single one. As much as we can relate injury rates to a particular movement, or we can relate success to a particular style of training, we can show the other side of that on how unsuccessful it is or how little the injuries are. And so I'm a big believer. My philosophy, people will say, what's your method? I don't have a method. My philosophy is to be adaptive. So I'm a big believer in making my toolbox as deep as possible. I'm educated in weightlifting. Weightlifting is the original barbell sport, not powerlifting. Sorry, brother. But weightlifting, so the snatch, the clean and jerk. And then I didn't have an education in powerlifting. So I went and I learned technical education in powerlifting, deadlift, sumo style, conventional, different styles of stance around high bar squatting versus low bar squatting. I wanted to get good at these things because I knew I would have one body type that would excel in this particular type of movement, another one that he's going to struggle with that and he's going to have problems. Because ultimately, my job is to improve performance. So I don't give a shit if he likes one or the other. It's more of which one's going to be more effective to get us to the end goal, especially if he's not competing in deadlifting. Okay, well, maybe pulling off of a 6-inch block is going to give us the strength return that we need, but I don't have to get him in a position that he sucks at in the bottom. When you add depth to that toolbox, you can manipulate a lot of these movements to still get the stimulus that you're after. So that is my philosophy is, what tools, now that I have this big toolbox, can I pull out to be effective for this particular fighter, in a lot of my cases right now, to get ready for this upcoming event. I have fighters that are religious, like, hey, man, I just want to be as strong as I can. But their game is not even to be strong.
Right.
Their game is a volume game. If I got a 125-pound male, sorry, man, but your game is volume. Your strike counts are higher than everyone else. Your scramble counts are higher than everyone else. Your clinch minutes are longer.
14 cartwheels.
Whereas if I looked at the heavyweights, average fight time's 4.5 minutes. The significant strike count is way down because they only throw about 4 of them, and then someone goes to sleep. So I can start to justify, yes, we do need to go after this method because it'll be influential over your game. But that's what I believe in. I believe in what is the approach conducive for being successful. So Tony, if his goal that he's after is being strong, and a deadlift is in his wheelhouse, if that's his bread and butter, he knows he can make strength gain, then I say, absolutely, that's your thing. Whereas if someone else, if I know they can have greater success squatting, low bar squatting, belt squatting, whatever the case may be, we're going to go after that tool, especially if they're not competing in squatting. Now, if it's your job to compete in the squat or to compete in the snatch, I need to make sure the tools that we're using are not only conducive for increasing force production, rate of force development, all that stuff, but I also need to make sure you have the technical capabilities to go out and compete in that skill.
Right.
Which some guy, if you compete in the deadlift and conventionally, then yes, you need to know how to conventional deadlift, and you need to be able to do that and perform that. But if I got a sprinter, and there's a lot of literature out there that talks about how influential the conventional deadlift is over the sprint start. But if I got a sprinter that habitually has mechanical problems with the deadlift, sorry, we're going to use something else for force production, even though that I know that's been studied to show great improvements in starting strength for a block sprinter. He has problems with it, so we're not going to use that. I'm going to dip into my toolbox. I'm going to find something else that's more appropriate for that particular athlete.
Makes sense. I mean, I always worry about injury because at this stage of the game,
no question,
you don't come back. When we get older, the things start falling off.
Well, and even as a professional, someone is going through your training, they get hurt doing your training, they don't come back.
They don't come back.
Even if they're healthy, they don't come back. I don't want to do that shit. That set me out of my game for 6 weeks. That put me out of my game for 3 months.
Yeah, and you can't have that.
Yeah, who am I to take away part of someone's career because I did some dumb shit when they were training that had nothing to do with improving performance?
Terrible.
Exactly. So, and that just goes to caring.
Let everybody know where to find you and how to reach out to you.
Yeah. So, Instagram is an easy way, bo.sandoval. You can catch me on Twitter at Oli Strength, OLY Strength. I'm pretty good about answering messages. Sometimes I'm slow. We get busy, but I don't ignore anyone. So those are the 2 best ways. For all you professionals out there, strength and conditioning professionals, sports science professionals, we are outside of COVID. We're a pretty open book. So anytime you have technical questions, you want to talk shop, we're designed to be an educational entity just as much as we're in a competitive league. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We love conversating. We love sharing the wealth of knowledge and also getting it from others as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you ever have any questions. We love talking shop.
And if you have a great product,
yeah,
go see
please
Bo.
Come waste our time.
Down on UFC and go see Bo. No, seriously, if you have a good one, go see him. But for sure. Listen, it's been amazing. Let's give a quick plug to Sorenex and Bert Soren. I appreciate them. Appreciate everything that they do. I want to give a special thanks to Bo for coming out. It's been awesome. I appreciate you taking the time. It means a lot, for sure. I know how busy your schedule is. And, it's not easy being a coach. I want to say that. It's not easy being a coach. It really isn't.
No doubt.
It's tough to go in there day in and day out and deal with and I say this wink, wink, ungrateful son of a bitches, but no, it's not easy being a coach, and coaches aren't appreciated enough. They truly are public servants for sure, even though you're paid, you got a good entity, but you truly are always at the behest and the emotion of the athlete. So
yeah, it's a service industry, that's for sure.
For sure. Absolutely. So I appreciate you coming out, and I want to thank the sponsors. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com. I want to thank Gallotech, Galco Holsters, Rhino Metals, and of course, Blackwater Ammunition. Go check them out. Links will be down below. And remember to tune in and leave reviews. I do a terrible job asking for reviews. I'm doing better. Appreciate everyone. We're out.